the Rings.
Lord of the Rings. Favorite scene from Lord of the Rings. Gosh, that's a good one.
It is.
I
Really
actually
good.
I'm nerdy enough that I actually have a lot of the soundtrack that I play in my car sometimes.
Oh my! Oh, you drive around to the soundtrack.
Sometimes I do. Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that. Like
If
I
I'm
thought.
on road trips, I'm like,
Yeah,
this is
yeah.
actually like, you know, and
That.
the
Yeah,
music's
yeah.
moving, and you're like,
Oh my goodness,
and,
that's so good.
yeah.
I do that with Back to the Future because, like, come on.
Oh God, yes, amazing,
Totally.
right?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
The other one happened was the ghost story happened up in Wyoming at John Myanzinski's place. John and I have spent a lot of time together, and I was up there, and he has a cabin his own that he built himself, and has a little guest cabin for people that visit. And it's just 150 yards down this trail, separated from his cabin, and it's just a little one room. And I was in there, and during the night, I something woke me up, or I became aware of something in the room. I thought, now I don't have great vision. I've 22,000 something. I'm
Okay.
legally without my contact lenses or
Oh
glasses.
wow.
So at night, I mean, I can still see, but at night, my vision is compromised. If my
Sure.
glasses are right where I put them, then I'm in trouble. But I rolled over, and this cabin has these huge picture windows around the almost all the way around. Well, on three of the four walls have huge picture windows with no curtains or drapes, and so it's pretty dark, but the little ambient starlight's coming in. And standing next to my bed, you brought up Mothman. This almost looked like Mothman.
No way.
It was this sort of ambiguous looking rounded shape with these two luminescent eyes sort of bare.
No way.
And it was just, and the shimmering appearance was just my blurred vision. And I looked at it for a second, and it was just 2 or 3 feet removed from the bed. And I looked at it, and I just thought, it's weird. And I rolled over, turned my back to it, and went back to sleep. The next morning, I just had this kind of creepy feeling about it. And the next morning, I told him, I didn't ask him. I just said, I had the weirdest dream last night. I said, I dreamt I rolled over, and I described what I saw. And he's sitting there just looking at me. He said, well, you're about the third person who's described that.
No way.
And then he told me about his experience. He had something, it has deep Indian tradition roots, but something had, there was a shortcut from down there. He lives just outside of Atlantic City, which is just an old mining ghost town almost. But and there was a shortcut. His cabin is up on the shoulder of the hill above the town, and he was walking that shortcut, which took him past this big old dead snag of a tree. And he had a dog with him at that time. And the dog, as they approached the tree, the dog started to bristle and growl.
Oh, man.
The dog kept watching the tree as they walked past, and he called the dog, and the dog came along. He went into the cabin, and the dog came in and turned around and just watched the door of the cabin. And then he said the dog's eyes followed something come through the door into the cabin. The dog watched, paced it with his eyes going across.
Man.
Anyway, that night, John had a dream about a figure that was like that. His was a little clearer. It was like a giant owl. And suddenly the owl, and in his, at least in his dream, he thought it pounced on him. And this owl, it stands like 5 feet tall. They were wrestling. And he said he felt like this was a life or death struggle for him. And anyway, he woke up the next morning just covered in sweat. His bed linens and things are just ripped apart and scattered all over the floor. And anyway, he talked to a shaman about it, an elder in the tribe, and he immediately recognized it. There's a name for it. I can't remember what the name is.
Oh, really?
The creature, the spirit that when your life is at a crossroads or very depressed or whatever, sometimes you encounter this spirit, and you grow. And he said if you had lost your fight, your battle with this, you may not have survived to tell about it, you know?
Oh man.
So this, yeah, very deeply entrenched in their traditional beliefs. And so I may have caught a glimpse of that. I
That's
didn't
awesome.
perceive any crossroads in my life. I was trying to think back to the circumstances at that time, if there was something going on, but apparently, you know, it wasn't so bad that that it was deemed I needed to wrestle with the
Yeah, right.
wrestling with the angel, you know, and the biblical account.
Exactly. Old Testament style. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, because I was so stunned because he didn't care. But it was
man.
weird too because he didn't have no fur. It was just I've wondered about this creature for a long time. I don't know what was wrong with it, if it was just old and didn't give shit or what, but that was probably, but you're right. I've got a bunch of encounters that I've had that's just I saw one time I saw this weird thing that actually I think it was probably a dog man, and I saw it over a stream watching me.
Really?
And it was, dude,
oh man,
I have never been scared in the woods.
Oh, for real?
Maybe,
yeah.
And it was another hot summer time, and it felt like pure do evil, like the devil himself was sitting right beside me. And I saw this thing. I got that video was on YouTube. It's called Dog Man and Missing Time. That one freaked me out really. After that one, I had a couple of people call me from the desert Southwest talking about Wendigos and stuff, and basically terrified. Man, it terrified the shit out of me. I never went back to that area. I went back a couple of weeks ago, and it was real quiet. But man, let me tell you something. I was on edge like you wouldn't believe.
Oh, I totally, I believe it. Yeah.
So I've had a lot of crazy experiences.
Going back to the previous story, when you're talking about the one that you saw with mange, were you actually able to look in its face then?
Oh yeah. It do we describe it? Or
yeah, go ahead. Yeah, that would be amazing. Yeah.
It was human, but it was not human, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yep.
And when it came out left to right, it came out, looked over at me, walked, and went into, and that was what was odd about the other ones that I have seen have had a lot of hair, nothing but hair. You could see the face. The one I saw had the mongoloid across the top looking. This one, it does that make sense when I say it looked human, but it didn't look human?
Yes, it does.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. And it was just, I don't know. My impressions I felt like it was just old that didn't care.
Interesting.
And so one of the hunters at that camp, his mother, 80 years old, actually saw the same one 10 years ago. And that's how I knew. Yeah. And I've been able to correlate it with all the people that have hunted in this hunting camp and talk about it. It's whenever you have somebody back see the same thing you've seen, it makes it makes it even better to me, because you got more than one witness,
So. I would have a lot of listeners come after me if I don't bring this up, because this year's Nebraska Bigfoot Conference became very popular for, like it got picked up by coast to coast, and you guys were all over the place. Can you walk me through what happened that everyone had their eyes on the Nebraska Bigfoot Conference?
I'll tell you what, I'm gonna let Harriet start.
All right. Go ahead.
The very first thought that I had was, this was not planned. It was not a publicity stunt or anything. We had just gone past the noon hour, and Igor had just started to speak, which was scheduled. And I don't think he was into his talk 5 minutes, and his telephone rang. Here he is up on stage. So he answers the phone, and it's this guy named Alex, which we're looking, all of us, we're going, who's Alex? We didn't know. Igor was so excited and he started yelling, but he was in Russian. We couldn't understand him. And this person on the phone, then he would yell back, and then Igor, da, 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 and we're still, what's going on here? And the bottom line is this Alex, of course, in Russia, it was the middle of the night.
Okay.
Here, it's about 2 p.m. or something like that. And the bottom line was Igor had been going up there, and he would spend like a month or so with this Alex and a couple other guys.
Oh, wow.
And they got some of the Bigfoot in that area started coming around their trailer a lot.
Okay.
And time they came, they would speak just like Ron Moorhead, if you've ever heard the Sierra sounds.
That's okay. So that's awesome. You brought that up, and I'll tell you why in a few minutes. Keep going. Yeah.
Okay. So, and they've tested the Sierra sounds a zillion times, and it always comes back, Scott Nelson, it's the real deal. And so in the meantime, Igor's yelling at Alex in Russian, and we're just kind of going on for the ride. And basically, this Russian guy said, Igor translated it, something to the effect that he has got this Bigfoot is standing right there next to him.
Wow.
And that's what we said, plus a couple other things. And so this Bigfoot guy started making all kinds of sounds. His voice was different than the recording that Ron Moorhead had, but
sure.
I mean, it's on the other side of the world.
Right.
And so we just listened to this conversation back and forth for 5 minutes or
at least.
yeah, I don't know. Most of it we did not understand what they were saying, but basically that was it. And so now we are in the process of having that tape, and the same thing happened out in Colorado, that we're having both of those.
Oh, it did. Okay.
Analyzed by a speech linguist who can tell us, first of all, if it was a fake or a hoax, or if, like the Sierra sounds, it turned out to be the real thing.
Mothman 46 says, and it sounds like he's a fan of yours. So does Joedy have any more info on the South American armored dogman incident? I'm not familiar with that story. Sorry.
Well, what that story? Let me tell you the story.
All right.
Okay. So I met a gentleman who was prior military, and basically what his job was, he was working for a black unit. Okay. And his job was to recover down UFOs and their entities.
Oh, wow.
Okay?
Really?
That was his job. And these are all guys that were former Navy SEALs, Special Forces, Rangers, special op guys. Okay. So he talked about in the 1970s, early 70s, the United States came across a new species of alien. Okay. He said there's 27 different species that we deal with, that we know of. Okay. This is a new one. These were canine in character.
Whoa.
Okay. And they were very hostile. They were very nasty, very mean, and very dangerous. So there was a down craft. They recovered, I think, 5 of them, he said. But they had like a body armor that was kind of like Halo or something to that effect. Yep. But they had no helmet, no gloves, and right below the calves, they didn't have any type of footing on there. So it was basically just protecting, the body from any type of damage.
Sure.
So they were so dangerous that they kept them out of the continental United States and kept them in a facility. I believe he said it was Honduras.
Wow.
South American country. So the facility that they had they were there for quite a few years. And he said they weren't intelligent, but they had common sense. and they were problem solvers.
Oh boy.
Okay.
Yikes.
So basically like a dog. Okay.
Yeah, right.
A dog will watch you. Okay. You take certain breeds of dog, like a German Shepherd, okay, or a Rottweiler, some of these smarter species of dogs. Well, you can go and train them, but they're going to be defiant and they're going to test you. They're going to see what your weaknesses are. In reality, they end up training you. And that's a fact. You can ask any type of dog trainer will tell you, you know, a German Shepherd will train you. Okay.
Wow.
I've got a 6-year-old German Shepherd, paid $3,000 for him to get trained.
Okay.
And he trained me better. Okay. Because the thing of it is, you know, you have to treat him like a dog and don't treat him like a family member. Okay.
Right.
So this is how these things work. So they were able to learn, they were watching, and they got to the point they were able to get out of the facility. Okay. And they did kill individuals there. Okay. They were able to recover their suits, their weaponry, and they just went, you know, crazy and got out of the facility, went into a small village there, ended up killing the people there. Okay. So they had to respond to there and eliminate the situation, which they ended up doing was killing them. But he said that they had special weapons that was able to penetrate the armor that they were using. But he, you know, when I was asking him about that, you know, he was saying, you have to understand, we have technology that no one knows about. Weaponry and things like that.
Totally.
And I said, you know, why aren't we using this kind of stuff? You know, and he said, the only time extraterrestrial weaponry would ever be used if we got into a massive war with China or the Soviet Union. That's when this stuff will come out.
Because it's if we don't, we're done.
We're
that
done.
Kind of deal. Yeah.
Or, you know, some other alien species.
Totally.
Yeah. So he said, you know, there's no need for it.
Yeah.
But they were able to eliminate the situation. Well, a few years later, I ended up talking with a soldier that served in Afghanistan.
Okay.
Okay. And they were looking for a unit, got lost. They had total no contact with them. So they didn't know if they got ambushed, got killed, captured, what. It's just they had some radio problems, and that's what the situation was. And they found them. So at the point where they're looking for them, this was in Kandahar Valley. Now, Kandahar Valley is where the giant was found.
Yep, totally.
Okay.
Oh, boy.
So they're up on a mountainside. The team's breaking off, you know, into different squads. He's with his battle buddy, and he's hearing something. So he tells his buddy, cover his 6, he's going to go up and take a look. So he goes up, and he comes right over the ridge, and he's looking over, and he sees 2 dead insurgents. Okay. And he sees 2 werewolves wearing body armor.
Oh, man.
And they killed the other insurgent.
Wow.
So he's describing it exactly to the T what this guy told me. Now, I talked to Linda Godfrey about this story.
Yeah.
Linda heard the same exact story from a completely different contact.
No way.
So that verified the story.
Man.
And it wasn't the same person she talked to, because she knows who this guy is who told her that story, because they became friends. But she heard the same exact thing.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, so that verifies the existence of what happened there. So, you know, this American soldier saw these 2, you know, but he said a blue light flashed, and you know, when they left the area, so they don't know if the blue light is going through a dimension, going through getting beamed to their craft, something to that effect. So a few years after that, well, maybe about 2 years after that, I got in contact with a very high-ranking Air Force officer.
Okay.
And he was telling me he works, you know, the Space Force was already there
Sure.
before President Trump
Okay.
made it official.
Right.
Okay. So he said it was already there.
Okay.
So our Space Force is working with other species of alien.
Wow.
Some we trust. There's some out there we just don't trust. There's some that we trust that's helping us, because eventually we have to unite against a evilness that's
Sure.
coming. So
Okay.
that's why we were brought in. The whole thing, here, the best way to describe it is we are aliens ourselves. Okay. Mars
Twist.
Yeah. was a planet where we came from. Okay.
Wow.
There was a battle between the Martians and another species. The Martians lost.
Okay.
Survivors came to Earth.
Really?
With the help of another species.
Okay.
So so you had different allies in that battle. Okay. So we're working with different other species of aliens. So there's this one particular species of alien, okay, that the United States deals with. We don't trust them military wise. We can stand toe to toe.
Okay.
Okay. But they're like very cunning. They're very arrogant. They think they're better than everybody else, and they're basically dangerous. They would never try to pull the stuff on us that they pull on other planets, because they know there'll be a consequence to that.
We'll take them out. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So what this alien species does, and he says he was aboard their ship, okay, along with other military officers. So they go into a very large hangar that's on the ship. He said they were thousands of werewolves.
No way.
Yeah, he said there were thousands of werewolves wearing body armor.
I was like, I didn't think it was coming back to it. You brought it back to it.
Yeah.
Nice.
These were clones. They call them clones.
No.
Okay. And what this alien species does, it will find a planet. It will send these clones down. The clones will create havoc on this planet. Okay.
Dang.
To the point that the people on this planet cannot survive. They're being beaten. This alien species comes in, destroys the clones, become heroes, become friends with this society. They infiltrate into society. They infiltrate into local government, infiltrate into their federal government, and they become the master.
Holy mackerel, dude. That's wild.
Yeah. And so this is what this species does.
Okay.
So, but he was saying that, these alien species, okay, of body armor. Okay. So I'm thinking about this, because I've seen something that dealt with a werewolf wearing body armor other than these stories. Okay. And I'm like, where did I see this? Where did I see this? So boom, it hit me. Star Wars, 1978.
Oh no.
Okay. Now, George Lucas is a Mason. Okay. George Lucas had very good friends with a whole lot of other Masons at NASA.
Oh man.
Okay. Now you have to understand, from the 1960s, 1970s, 1980s, Masons pretty well ran a lot of stuff.
Sure.
Okay?
Yeah.
They ran, NASA. Okay. Everybody in any type of command structure in NASA was a Mason. So he was able to see things when he did, that he was able to see things that most people who even worked at NASA with clearances were not able to see.
Wow.
Okay. So NASA helped Lucas with Star Wars, with a lot of different ideals. Okay. So he had two werewolves.
Yeah, why not? Yeah, totally.
Yeah. He had two werewolves in the bar scene.
Oh,
Okay.
no, totally. You're right. Yeah.
Right.
In
Now,
the cantina.
Baker, yeah. Jim Baker made mask. Now, Jim Baker was the one that did Harry and Henderson.
Oh no.
Costume. Okay.
Yeah.
And he did the werewolf for the new Wolfman movie, the remake of the 1941. Sure. And he did some other, other monsters. Now, he didn't do that just to throw additional masks in that movie. He was told to make those.
Wow.
Okay? So what's the reasoning for that? Well, in the 1980s, Lucas Industries put out a book on Star Wars. Told you everything you needed to know about Star Wars, because you had The Empire Strikes Back coming in, you had, the Return of the Jedi, all that, the franchise kicking up. Yep. So people were Star Wars hungry. So he did a book with told what each character was, what their uniform was, what their weapon, and all this stuff. Well, and it even had some of the stuff from the bar scene. Now, the werewolf in the bar scene, in that book, is wearing body armor.
Oh my goodness, no way.
The same exact body armor. And I have a picture of it, where it's no helmet, no gloves, and cut right above the ankles.
Okay? Oh, wow.
The exact description of what everybody was seeing. And George Lucas had this in his movie. Now, and I can't remember what star, I believe it was going to be in Rogue One, that he was actually going to have those creatures in Rogue One.
Okay.
When they were on that planet, I can't think of the name of the planet, the one that the Death Star blew up, that they were held captive for a little bit. Yep. When they were walking around with the other different species, they were going to have those dogmen there. Oh, wow. But for some reason, it got pulled for some reason.
Oh, man. That's so awesome.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting, but to make it even weirder.
There's no way this can get weirder.
Yeah. Richard Hoagland. You know who Richard Hoagland is?
I don't know.
All right, Richard Hoagland he's a big UFO guy.
Oh, okay, that's why. Yeah.
TV and everything like that.
All right.
Author. Now, Richard Hoagland wrote a book called Dark Mission. And basically was about the Masons running NASA and how things were ran. Well, the Apollo 11, when it landed and was out looking around, it found a crashed object in one of the craters. And there were body parts of a robot. So they took photographs of it. So Richard Hoagland was able to get the copies of the pictures under the Freedom of Information Act.
Oh, wow.
And plus he got them from friends from NASA. And he actually got the colored ones from the friends from NASA. And guess what the robot looked like?
If you say R2D2 is C3PO, I'm going to just toss. Really?
CP3O. Google.
Oh, my goodness.
Google Richard Hoagland's Dark Mission robot head, and it's CP3O's head.
Wow.
And there's also.
That is awesome.
Not in this book, but there's also a photograph of a spaceship that was captured by NASA astronauts while they're flying over the moon, of a spaceship sitting in a crater that is identical to the Millennium Falcon.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So
that's awesome. Okay.
Shannon, I got to tell you, you got a badass radio voice, man.
Okay. So, all right. So we're really technically recording. Voice, oh, tell me more. No, we're recording. So here's the thing.
Oh, sorry.
So I don't care. Patreon, you're going to have to deal with it for a few minutes. But okay. So here's the thing. I used to work at Apple as a genius in Des Moines, because I live in Des Moines. Literally every week, a customer would say, like, have I heard you somewhere before? Are you on the radio? You have a really good radio voice. Maybe you should do that. I'm like, I don't know. I'm just fixing computers. And then I got really bored during pandemic, and I was like, I like Bigfoot and cryptozoology. Let's start a podcast. And like, it's kind of worked. So
that's the next thing that happened.
Yeah, Thank you.
No, you got to.
That's really nice. Yeah. So what cool stories, more cool stories, because you've already shared a lot of cool stories. What other cool stories do you have?
Well, it's kind of on the next project.
Okay.
It's the Thompson Flat Monster.
Mm,
It is very long and complicated. And the thing is that with Ape Canyon, the miners were up there for basically only, let's see, they started prospecting in 1918, and then they split in 1924. And so that was about, what is that, about 6 years that the miners were up there in Ape Canyon.
Yep.
I've been on that project now for like about twice that time. Say
Wow.
about 12 years ish or so. The Thompson Flat Monster took place over the course of 30 years down in Southwest Oregon on the South Fork of the Sixes River. So I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to finish the research on the Thompson Flat Monster before I'm dead, given that time that it takes place.
Yeah. Right.
Uh,
Wow.
but what ended up happening up there, they called it the Gold Rush of Southwest Oregon. And in 1974, there was this fellow named Tom, and Tom was up there prospecting just south of the river on Star Mountain. And he was up there just with his dog, and he was just small pick mining up there looking for gold, and he found it. But while he was finding it, something came up from behind Tom and picked him up bodily off the ground. He's
Whoa.
down, crouched over, and something bodily picked him off of the ground, throttled him, threw him down a little 30-foot bluff.
Whoa.
And Tom later said that it was just split-second timing. All he could see was that it was an incredibly large creature covered with hair. They was able just to like throttle the crap out of him and throw him down a bluff. And Tom was smart, and he told his friends that I'm going up to Star Mountain up on South Fork of the Sixes River, and I'll be back 2 or 3 days. Okay, no Tom. So his friends go up there and poking around, like, where is he? And they find him unconscious at the base of the mountain. They pull him in a little bit of a makeshift stretcher, get him back into town, and nurse him back to health. While Tom is recovering, one of his friends has picked up his stuff, his rifle and his bag, and he said he looked in his bag and he pulled out this huge hunk of quartz. And on the end of the hunk of quartz was the biggest gold nugget that he had ever seen in his life.
No way.
That's what started what they now call, sort of the Sutter's Mill of Oregon, the gold rush.
Okay.
And it's like,
wow,
there's gold up there, and up on the South Fork of the Sixes River. And a bunch of people start rushing up there to start. At first, their load claims where they're actually tunneling into the side of the rock. Later, it turns into placer claims because it's easier to do placer claims than digging your way into hard rock. But a bunch of people start going up there to lay down their placer claims. Also concurrent with that are a bunch of published reports in the newspapers where it's not. I mean, some of them are pretty banal. What one would call just a passive Sasquatch sighting, of this creature down by the creek bed, 6 or 7 feet tall, covered entirely with hair, seeing large prints in the creek beds and everything. Some of them not so passive. One of the first accounts, Tom ended up getting back to health. He prospects a little bit more, lays down a couple of claims down there on the Sixes River, and then he just disappears. A couple of people also that you can read in some of John Green's books as well.
Oh, nice.
A couple of people bought one of his claims. They're coming back from their claim where they had set up camp with, a camp with tents and everything. They come up this hill, and there is this big bruiser, big creature tearing the crap out of everything in their camp, tearing up their tent, tearing up everything, and throwing it down the hill.
Whoa,
And they
crazy.
take a few shots at the creature, and doesn't really do anything. They turn around and get back to town, and within a matter of weeks sell their claim. So so they sell their claim. Well, by that point, this area is called Thompson Flat. It's a very small, limited area.
Okay.
It's on the north side of the South Fork of the Sixes River. It's maybe about half a mile long and about a quarter mile wide north to south. It's incredibly steep. This is not volcano country. This is more granite and marble uplift. It's more like mini Rockies, sort of.
Oh, wow.
It's very, very steep, but this is just a very limited, small flat area. People are going up there and they're laying down gold claims because there is gold up there.
Okay.
And so I found a newspaper article where there was a reporter who was traveling through the area and heard about a mining camp somewhere up there on the Sixes River, and he visited it. And this article was published, 1881, 1882, where the reporter went up there and found this small, like, tent city, some of them with cabins that were built. And he mentioned there were about 40 people there. And some of the miners up there had their families with them, had wives and kids. And they were just working their individual claims and coming together in this little sort of village. Okay. And, sharing meals and sharing stories and sharing ammo or whatever resources they had. Well, at the time when the reporter went up there, he was able to interview some of these miners and able to name names. Some of these names, like Doc Elgin, had his own Bigfoot encounters with, being scared off by this large creature. The weird thing about it is that we tend to think of Sasquatch stories of this red, brown, hair-covered creature.
Right.
A lot of the stories up there at Thompson Flat describe them as blonde or yellow-haired.
Really?
Creatures. Yeah, not reddish brown.
Whoa.
So things are going along, somewhat relatively swimmingly, until there was this one day when it's nighttime and people are back in camp, and where's John? Shouldn't John be back by now? Everyone's having dinner.
Uh-oh.
Could you go check his cabin? They knock, they open the door, and there's nobody in there. We better go back up to his claim. We better go up to John's claim. They go up to John's claim, and there he is, dead. And his head's bashed in.
Oh, man.
And laying next to his body is a rock that's bloody.
Oh, man. Wow.
So that was the first one. And then this happens repeatedly 4 times again within the period of about 18 months. And so the first 2 with John McClone and John Jensen, they go right up to the bodies. The next one is a guy named Bohei Johnson. He was gone for a number of days and eventually weeks, and they find his body again beaten to a pulp out there in the middle of nowhere.
Oh, that's crazy.
At this point, people are getting freaked out because there are a number of sightings. The last one was Mike Madigan. Mike was one of the first ones to go up there and start prospecting for gold. He didn't look for gold a lot, but he was mainly a huntsman, and he went out there hunting. He worked on his mine a little bit, but he went out hunting, brought the meat back in and traded it for goods and that kind of thing. Madigan was going out in the woods hunting at Thompson Flat with his 2 dogs up on this rise. He sees this huge creature. His dogs, being hunting dogs, instinctively, one of them takes off, The creature grabs the dog and just
Whoa.
throttles him, killing him, throws
Oh
him off.
man.
Madigan takes his rifle and takes a few shots into him. The next dog takes off towards this creature. Madigan is like trying to call his dog back, throwing bullets into this creature. The creature grabs the second dog, kills the other dog. Madigan splits, turns around. So with these recurring violent stories of this 6 to 7 foot tall hair-covered creature, people have vacated Thompson Flat, and Madigan is pretty much the only person left up there. Well, Madigan comes back into town once in a while and trades goods. Week or two goes by and Madigan's not back into town.
Oh
His friend Ramsey is like, I'm going to go look for him. He goes up there and he's searching around Madigan's camp, and he finds this new kind of like big pile of rocks, strangely piled up, and he digs through it, and there's a body in there that's been underneath these rocks for a number of days or more. He recognizes the body because of the sidearm, because of the revolver, and because of the knife, and he's like, that's Madigan's goods, right? So what we have now, and after that, there was an attack on what was called the Harrison Cabin in 1904, and a few other Sasquatch sightings up there. But the weird thing about it is that right off of the west side of Thompson Flat, there is this dinky little nothing burial ground. And this is in the National Forest now. And it's like 2 miles from the logging road. It's out in the middle of the woods. Right off of the edge of Thompson Flat, there's a burial ground. The grave markers are mainly wood, and they're all kind of decomposed and falling over.
Man.
But what we do have from the Genealogical Society is we do have the burial records in the Huckleberry Knoll Cemetery, as it's called. And the funny thing is that each one, there's basically only 4 burials up there. Each one of the names in the Huckleberry Knoll Cemetery at Thompson Flat matches the names of the miners who were killed by unknown means at Thompson Flat surrounding aggressive sightings of this large cryptid.
That's a little weird, man.
Sure is.
That's weird.
Yeah, you bet. So, as we spoke about before, you can imagine what this involves. Medical examiners' records, death records, mining records, deed records, anything I can get my hands on to try to put the pieces of this story together. And then once I get something, in the document evidence, taking that document evidence and going out to Thompson Flat and seeing, as a surveyor, I'll be able to figure out where was Jensen's claim, where was McClone's claim, where was Madigan's claim, where was the Harrison Cabin claim of where they were attacked in 1904, to try to put this story onto the ground. What evidence?
That's awesome.
So
that is really cool. Oh man, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, great.
That's
stuff.
Cool. And that could be another book by itself.
Oh sure, and it could be another 10 to 20 years.
Yeah, well, yeah. So I guess we'll see, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I go for quality. I don't go for quantity. So
that's right. That's
as long as it takes, man.
Future generations will appreciate that. So
they might have to take it over from me. I got to tell you.
That's a good point. Yeah, pass on the football. Yeah, but
right on.
Oh man, Marc, thanks for giving us a little bit more. This has been really fun.
Oh, it's been great.
Man, you're a cool dude.
Oh, thanks.
Who is also very humble, and I appreciate that. It's very cool, but
we had a great time tonight. I really appreciate you having me on and reaching out to me. That's a lot of fun.
Thank you. Hopefully someday I'll be able to, our paths will cross and we'll have a glass of wine or something. That'd be awesome.
I'd like that a lot. Yeah. Awesome. Okay. That'd be cool. Okay.
Yeah.
you had mentioned that you've gone to North America for expeditions as well. Do you mind sharing about some of that?
Yeah, quite a few times. I mean, the first
Okay.
time with Adam Davies and Laurie Simmons, and we got the sort of camera trap photo that's quite controversial. I mean, I really don't know what that was, but we did have, if you can see it on YouTube, put Extreme Expeditions, it comes up. And we did have, you know, one of our members is quite stocky, crouched in the same position, but somebody else did analysis and said, you know, from judging Dave's height compared to this thing was about 8 feet tall. So, you know, that was quite, but we don't know. I mean, we didn't know whether it was, you know, I think we were just open-minded with, is it one of us in a sleeping bag, or it just looked too large. Very strange, but it was just no footprints because the ground's just really solid with just dust, you know, you didn't get footprints. But we did see about 10, 15 miles away from there, we did find some really good Bigfoot footprints, which you could tell were cast some of those, got some photos of those, and you could see it was something really heavy because it was in mud. I tried to jump off a log and see whether I could recreate the depth, and I was just nowhere near the depth.
Yeah, you hear that all the time.
The thing was obviously quite heavy, and you could actually see where its toes had like crunched down, trying to get hold as it went up, you know, with slope. So they were pretty, you know, and they got the one after the other. They're not side by side, they're like one after the other, you know, and they look quite authentic. And I also heard what I think was a howl on that first, yeah, just as I was getting my tent. The others had gone over the other side, but I could hear what sounded like a howl.
Was it like are you familiar with like the Ohio howl from the early 90s, like that one?
Yeah,
it's the one you hear on all the TV shows, you know. Yeah, that one.
Yeah,
it was like that.
Yeah, but the exciting stuff really started to happen with 2014. I went out with Tom Control. I've met Tom on the first.
Oh yeah, totally cool.
And we went, quite a few of us met up, and we went just outside Orleans. There's a logging road up there. Is it the OS or a G road? Anyway, the Orleans to, I can't remember the name. Anyway, this was in 2014, and we got there, and you could clearly see what looked like Bigfoot footprints within minutes. Like over the anthills, these big footprints. Like, whoa, this is good. Wow. And then it's about 3-4 days in, we would drive to Willow Creek just to get a meal, which is about 40 miles away. Now the logging road's really good. It's sort of, you know, what do you call it? I don't know what you call it. It's like gravelly stuff, but it can drive quite fast on it. You can probably do 40-50 quite safely. Yeah. And then, you know, a bit to the campsite, you have to go really slow. But we were going along there, it was 24 in the afternoon, and I suddenly see from a distance, and I was really annoyed because I was just charging my camcorder batteries, and of all the previous times that I'd had it jammed in with my neck support thing, and like, oh no! And I could see these things from a distance, and they looked like two men in all-in-one suits, stock suits with the hood up, but bare feet. And I said to Tom, God, what are these idiots doing? They're killing their feet on there. God, do you think they're drug runners or something? He starts laughing, and he said, what are you here to look for? Or something like that. Oh,
that's awesome. Yeah, what are you here to look for?
It gets better than that, though. They then ran out into burnt trees and then panicked because they couldn't get cover because it was literally burnt out for miles on the one side, but not on the other.
Yeah, sure.
And then they suddenly came back in front of the car, and I got my head turned to Tom. I heard him yell, and suddenly they're right in front of the car, and he slams on the brakes and manages to stop, and he's skidding because it's like quite, you know, gravelly. And literally for about a second and a half, they just stood there because they don't know where to go, and you can tell they were panicking. They were like rib flapping, and their face is like twitching. Well, the one I was just looking at the, you know, was flicking to the two, but the one I was looking at mainly, and you could see the faces twitching. They were that close. They were panicking. They didn't know what to do. And then they shot down a really steep slope, which afterwards, it's funny, people do this. I've read it's very consistent. People will see them and not stop. because your brain's going, oh, it's not to that, but
it doesn't
also,
know what to do.
You know, part of my brain was also wouldn't have said stop because a bit of thing, were they just really weird looking drug runners? Because your brain's trying to rationalize it.
It's got to be something else. Yeah.
But also you don't. But for Tom, it was the novelty. He hardly like, oh yeah, I'm glad you've seen them, sort of thing. He hardly reacted because Tom's seen them loads of times. And Arla, Kalich was in the back as well, and she didn't react too much because she's seen loads of them as well. But they were like,
who was that? Who was that in the back?
Arla Kalich Collins. I can never pronounce her name right. I'll check though and let you know.
Okay.
But Arla, I know is Arla. But
okay.
Colette, that's it, I think. Anyway, she was in the back as well. She'd been half asleep, so she woke up just to see them shooting over this slope.
Yeah.
But it was a close-up. You could see the it wasn't fur, it was like hair all over, just like this, but all over, apart from the face, which was a lot barer. And the hands looked a lot barer, and some of the feet,
really,
a little bit on the chest, but you could see that the face was really not white. The eyes were a lot bigger than I expected. They were all dark, couldn't see any white at all. They were quite spooky looking eyes, very deep brow ridge, pointed head like domed head like a gorilla, like sagittal crest possibly, and massive shoulders. The shoulders are about 3.5 foot across.
Oh wow.
But it was almost like an inverted triangle. So you've got the very broad shoulders, and the legs were incredibly thin. I didn't, they weren't stocky like they portray in some images. They were like humans' legs.
That's
the top
interesting.
They're a bit like a rugby player in England, or I don't know what you call rugby there, but rugby players don't have much neck. They're very muscly.
Sure. Okay.
And a bit similar. You couldn't see much neck as well.
Oh man.
Yeah.
So remind me, how far away were they when you're taking a look at them?
I reckon I said 15 feet. Tom said 20 feet, and I said they were 6.5 and 7 foot tall. Tom said they were 7 and 7.5 feet tall. He's ex-forces, so he's probably going to be, and he's an ex-logger. He's probably better at judging distances. So
sure,
yeah.
You said Northern California area because you were driving into Bluff Creek.
Yeah, it was basically. We found out afterwards it was 2.5 miles from Bluff Creek, where Patty was filmed, where we saw them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Humboldt, I think this is Humboldt County, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fascinating. Curious. I don't think you mentioned this. Do you remember color scheme at all?
They were like very dark. It was almost like black, but it's like slatey grey. But I think they were black because it was very dusty. I think the dust had given the effect of slatey grey, but I think they were actually black or very, very dark brown. But they looked almost like slatey grey. We have Welsh slate, and that's like a very dark grey. They looked like that. It was so dusty there.
Did seeing so looking at the figures, looking at the faces, did that evoke any emotions particularly in you? I always find that interesting.
I think those basically like, it's like seeing a unicorn in the middle of the road. You just go, I can't believe I'm seeing this, and your brain's going, oh, it can't be that. It must be drug runners. There must be drug runners with bare feet. Perhaps they're the guy. And I was thinking, well, if they're wearing a big woolly suit, fur suit in that weather, it was hot. It was really cold at night, but it was really hot in the day because it was June. They'd be black, as Tom said, they'd be, blacking out in no time. They would not cope with that heat. So, but your brain sort of rationalizing, are they just really ugly blokes? And I think I hope I'm never going to end up in an interview with this guy, but I would describe the face like a really ugly Xavier Bardem. Got very similar features to him.
That's amazing. Yeah,
But
no, I know.
very human-like. I was amazed how human-like. Yeah.
Wow, that's
And
really
and
interesting.
I'll find you as I'm speaking. I'll find you the net Ola's surname. I'm hopefully it's on her surname, but she says some of them are actually quite handsome, by human terms. Some of them are quite, ape-like, and some are. I say Arla.
Really?
Colette. That's her name. Yeah.
Do you mind? Do you have like that written down in front of you?
Yeah, I can spell it. Yeah, Caileach, and her surname is Collett.
Is that another researcher from the UK or?
No, she's from originally from Texas.
Really?
Yeah.
I've never heard
Yeah.
that name before.
And
That's
she's written books
interesting.
on it as well. Her
Okay.
experiences as a child. Her and her
Wow.
mother came across a couple, and that she's been into.
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. They're saying that some of them were better, like almost like better looking than others, or like some of them.
Yeah,
were,
there's supposed
yeah,
to be
that's,
the
that's
tribe.
weird.
So there's the ugly ones and the pretty ones. There's supposed to be those who look ape-like and those who look quite human-like. And I know some people have said, is it a sub-breed or are they just like people? You're going to get ugly people and pretty people, and yeah.
All right, go ahead.
All right. So a quick story that's called the Bigfoot Child. That's and it was related to me by one of the guys over at the visitor center in Nenana. And it's really common for people who live along the waterways to travel from like Nenana over to Copper Center through the waterways. And then, they might overnight at overwinter at Copper Center, and then in the summer return back, right? So it's really a really common practice. And this story is of a woman, this older woman, who went over to Copper Center to do her salmon fishing, right? And she overwintered there. And one day she went out to get firewood, and there was like this Bigfoot child that was abandoned or lost or something. And she was scared of it. And then she kind of went back inside and kind of kept an eye on it from inside. And it there weren't any others around, and she didn't know what all was going on. So she brought it inside to warm it up because it was pretty cold out. Okay. And there weren't any others that came around looking for it. So she had no idea what was going on. But this thing would help her move wood and that sort of thing.
Oh,
right?
real? Wow.
Yeah.
Huh.
And they kind of bonded. And then when the summertime came around, they went back to Nenana, and she went back with this Bigfoot, that she had kind of collected over the winter. Apparently she had decided, she was old enough that she decided that she didn't want to go back and forth too much anymore, or very much at least. So she mainly stayed in Nenana. And from what I was told, this thing wore a couple articles of clothing, and I don't know what exactly that means. And it could understand a couple words. She trained it to understand a couple words. And I think it could say one or two words, maybe wood or something. And so there was a little bit of communication. And it mainly just stuck with her, but sometimes she'd send it to the outpost to get groceries or something, or to carry the heavy stuff with her.
That's so wild.
And then when she passed, it just walked off into the woods, and no one ever saw it again.
That's wow. Has that ever been is that in any books? I've never heard that before. That's really weird.
I don't think I've ever seen it in a book.
Wow, really?
The guy who told me said that it had just been passed down to him.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Did you say
stuff from Nenana?
Did you say what year about that took? What, a year, or not really?
He said he thought it was from around 1860.
Oh, that's crazy! Wow. Yeah.
So that would have been, the majority would have just been natives in the area, but there would have been some miners and stuff.